That's how I start my creative flow. So I try to divide in small tasks, and I try to start with something fun, because when the fun is done, it's easier to do the more complicated stuff. So I eat the ice cream first when other people will eat the frog first.
Hey there. To get started with this interview, start by introducing yourself.
Hello, my name is Francis. I am a lettering artist, type designer, illustrator, and painter. And I've been doing this for something like 10 years now.
Do you have any childhood memories? Something very strong about how you really got into playing with letters?
Yes, I think the first memory I have with letters was drawing the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom poster. So I was doing the lettering of Indiana Jones with all the really nice and fancy letters. And yeah, that's the first memory I have. And that's the first time I really enjoyed playing with letters.
And was there any aha moments in your professional career?
Yes, I had that moment in 2015 when I went to New York to do a 1 week workshop with Ken Barber, and I realized in 1 week how I could improve my lettering process. For me, I was doing 2, 3 sketches, and that was enough. And during the week I spent there, I realized that I could do more, and so my lettering would be much better. And the difference between the third sketch and the eighth or ninth sketch was incredible. So that's really a aha moment for me, because that's where I realized that I could do much better than I was already doing.
Why do you think other people should actually care about crafting their own alphabets, their own fonts?
Wow, that's interesting and difficult question at the same time. I would say that doing your own alphabet helps you to understand better letters, to understand better how type design or typography works on, especially on the brain when you read stuff, for example. So understanding it's good to understanding typography. It's also good because sometimes you can use your own work uh, to into your illustration or even graphic design. Sometimes you don't find the font you would like to use. You don't find it, so it's also a good idea to create it by yourself. I have a good example. I work with cartoonists, and my job for them is to create their own font. So when the comics goes internationally, they can export the file of the comic, but they also can export the font, which is handmade, which is made by the illustrator itself. And it's really interesting because you can draw your illustration, your comics, or even your branding, and add your own personality with it by doing your own font.
So, what's your experience with font creation software?
I think it depends on the kind of font you want to do. But if you are a beginner, I would highly recommend using the Fontself plugin on Illustrator. If you want to draw serif or sans serif or many kind of vector fonts, because you already know Illustrator, so it's easy to draw letters in a software you already know. Fontself plugin is really fantastic because you just have to drag and drop stuff inside the plugin. Then there is a smart button that does the spacing and cutting for you. Yeah, it's really easy to use and really fun to use. I also use Fontself on the iPad. I use it for sketching my fonts, even if I want to draw a sans serif font, for example, so I know if it's interesting or not. And I also design whole handmade fonts like the one in the 50s, 60s you could find in movies or cartoons, and I publish them. And also the third software would be Glyph, but for more advanced features. But to start, I would start with Fontself.
Did you have any surprise when you started using Fontself on iPad?
I think the great idea is it's drawing letters because you can draw on the iPad. We use it already a lot. So when I have an idea for a font, I go in Fontself on the iPad. I sketch a few letters and I see where it goes, and I don't have to take care of the spacing kerning. The tool does it for me. So I can see if it works. I can play with the letters I made, and at the end I decide if I want to do everything in the Fontself app, which I do more and more actually because it's really fun and easy to use. It's really fantastic. That's a really great surprise, and it did change my process for designing fonts.
Do you have any rituals or a routine to get started when you need to go into the creative flow?
I have many problems to go into the creative flow, especially because I have ADHD. So I try to divide in small tasks and I try to start with something fun because when the fun is done, it's easier to do the more complicated stuff afterwards. So I eat the ice cream first when other people will eat the frog first. So I try to divide in a small task. Like right now, I do a lot of collage or paper cut, and I say, okay, I do it for half an hour and then I see what happens. That's how I start my creative flow. It's not always easy, but once I have an idea, that's how I work.
Many people actually get into a creative block, and I was wondering whether you had some tricks about how you can overcome these creative blocks.
Okay, so when I'm blocked, as I said earlier, I try to divide so it's easier to go into the process. But when I'm blocked, I go outside. I go out. I don't think the best ideas comes when you are in front of your computer or even on your iPad. I think it's when you do something that is not creative. And something that helps really a lot is to go outside, to go out in the city, or for me, it's mostly in nature, in the forest or in the mountains. And that's where I have ideas. And when I come back, I feel more confident to start something new with new ideas. It make it easier for me to have less of these creative blocks.
Where you see the whole type and lettering industries go over the next 5, 10 years?
We are really early, I think, into the era of AI with letters and typography, but I think at some point this artificial intelligence will be able to do fonts. That's why I focus mostly on trying to do fun and funky fonts, and I try to not be where everybody is. I try to be much more on the human side of letters. I think that AI is going to be able to do lettering for sure. But it's the same for illustration. I think if you have your own style and your own identity, you will always find people who will hire you for something really special. It's the same for type design, except that selling fonts more experimental, it's more difficult than selling serif or sans serif fonts. I'm not sure that AI will be able to do the human side of letters.
Are there any creatives out there from whom you would like to learn more about?
It's interesting because my work is based on 50s, 60s lettering and type in general. So the people I would like to have in front of me are dead right now. But I think it would be people like Saul Bass, Paul Rand, Herb Lubalin, people like that who they had great identity and personality in their design, which can be typography or illustration or design in general. I'm really into that kind of stuff. So maybe between Solbass and Herb Lubalin for perfection on Herb Lubalin's side, I was able to, or even people he used to work with, like Tom Carnese, I saw their drawings, saw their lettering pieces, and they were so fantastically perfect. And Solbass, it would be more on the opposite because that's with him that I started to be more perfectionist, where I realized that things didn't have to be perfect to be enjoyable, and I had more and more emotions with movie titles from the 50s, 60s, even like people like Sandro Simeoni. It was far from being perfect, but it was so emotional that, yeah, I'd like to meet that kind of people too.
And the last one, just to give us some fresh air, is to know whether there are like 3 songs that you really enjoy in these moments.
So the one I have in mind right now would be Head Over Heels from Tears for Fears. I think it's from the second album. So that would be the song I would listen the most for the last 30 years. And maybe some Steely Dan. Steely Dan was kind of rock band in the 70s in the US. Really liked their style, and they had great players to musicians, and that's something that never dies. Good music never dies, so I like to play some Steely Dan music on my stereo system. And yeah, it helps me to be away from the news, especially.